Hello guys, and welcome to my new video, and this is going to be a big one. This is going to be my initial reactions and rankings of every single healer when it comes to Mythic Plus in 10.2, because guess what? I got to test out every single healer on PTR over the last weekend. But a mandatory disclaimer before I do any of these videos, this is not a meta prediction, guys. In order to predict what the meta is going to be, you need to know what the group composition is going to look like in terms of tanking, in terms of DPS, because guess what? If augmentation of Evoker is going to be considered mandatory like it was in Season 2, that means things like preservation of Evoker's viability in high keys is most likely going to dip. And this can be said for multiple other classes. This ranking is mainly based on how much fun I had with each healer, based on the changes that happened to them. I'm also talking about the fact that I was doing these keys in a pug environment. Most of the keys were done in a random group, and I'm also ranking the success chance of each healer, how much fun I had, and also how easy it was for me to heal up members, keep them topped up, make sure no one dies. And that is basically my initial ranking. What was my experience with every single healer? This is not meta, this is basically my initial reactions. And again guys, if you like this content, like and subscribe. It takes me ages to edit and test all these healers every time, and you have to consider that the changes, there is going to be more changes happening every week to healers. I was only able to test healers on the previous weekend because Blizzard has a specific or a window where you can only test Mythic Plus, and that is basically from Thursday to Monday. So that means there's most likely going to be changes happening throughout the week, which means then I can also test them out at the end of the weekend, which kind of proposed or gave me an idea of doing a weekly tier list based on the changes that happened during that week. Let me know how you feel about this idea and if you like to see something like this. I almost forgot to mention, during my PTR testing, I chose to test one dungeon, that is Warcraft, because I wanted to see how every healer is going to feel when healing the same dungeon, healing the same damage patterns, because Warcraft is one of those dungeons that requires a lot of HPS. So we were testing every single healer. We're scaled up to a certain item level. There wasn't a lot of differentiation in terms of gear. I was using similar trinkets, and I wanted to keep testing as close as possible when it comes to every single healer to see how each healer deals with high HPS, with pug situations, with unexpected damage, single target healing, and all those things combined. So let's go and get started. Without delaying too much, let's go and get started with the ranking. So here it is. This is my tier list, and again, it's a bit of a different tier list because you have needs more changes, and there's going to be certain healers that are going to fall into this category because I genuinely believe they're going to receive changes in the next, again, maybe this week when I'm making this video, that's going to make these healers a lot better, because right now they just feel extremely or somewhat incomplete. And now let's go and look at Restoration Druid. Before we're going to be placing it in anywhere on this scale, let's talk about the good and bad things that I experienced during my PTR testing with Restoration Druid. Based on my experiences, Restoration Druid continuous healing has been increased by a significant amount, and I'll talk about why. Now, first of all, every single healer received buffs in terms of spot healing. Your spot healing capabilities are a lot stronger in Season 3 because Blizzard kind of heard healers talk about, or Mythic Plus healers complain about Mythic Plus healing. So they increased spot healing for pretty much every single healing class out there, but Restoration Druid was one of the few classes that received changes in terms of the AoE healing. For example, Wild Growth has been buffed, but the main reason for this is because Flourish has been absolutely decimated. Flourish is no longer going to be your focal point when it comes to Mythic Plus or raids, and honestly, during my testing, I wasn't even running Flourish, I was running Verdant Infusion, and I had a really good time. I did not really run into these issues where, hey, I need Flourish burst healing in order to kind of keep everyone alive. My continuous healing as Resto Druid, because of the buffs to continuous healing and because of the fact that your 2-set bonus as Resto Druid provides so much more additional healing from your Grove Guardians, I felt like I always had control over the group's party's health points or health. There's quite a few people who get confused about the tier set bonus when they read Nourish. It's like, where is your Nourish coming from? What is going on here? Because at the end of the dungeon, Nourish was by far the biggest portion of my total healing. It provided so much of my overall healing, and that was basically, most of it was coming from my Grove Guardians. Grove Guardians are going to cast Nourish besides other things in terms of Swiftness and Wild Growth, depending on which talents you pick. And this Nourish was synchronizing with a 2-set bonus, which made Grove Guardians were really slapping. And that the same kind of thing can actually be said in raids depending on which build you're playing. So my Resto Druid was able to provide a lot of healing without actually healing themselves, which is insane because if you think about this, you're able to cast Grove Guardians in different forms and things like that. So if you decide to provide additional damage, let's say in kitty form or boomkin or whatever, you can cast Grove Guardians and still keep DPSing. Now, in terms of DPS, I'm not sure what the best form is going to be because they did both Rat and Starfire by a significant amount. I'm I personally big enjoyer of kitty form, and I enjoy applying bleeds and things like that because I just feel it fits into that Resto Druid playstyle. So I had a very easy time of keeping everyone alive because of the fact that my continuous healing has been buffed, and because of the fact that Grove Guardians feel a lot stronger with the 2-set bonus, which meant I was able to DPS more. But of course, in these poke situations on PTR, I was babysitting the party. I didn't spend as much time as I would like in terms of DPSing, and again, if you're running with an organized group, you probably could spend a lot of your time, depending on the key and affixes and things like that, you could spend a lot of your time in different forms providing damage, and then allowing, or how to say, trusting your Grove Guardians to heal up people who are not in an immediate danger. I genuinely believe Restoration Druid probably right now has arguably one of the best consistent healing that you can have, and because of this, you're not reliant on other cooldowns like Flourish. You can use other talents if you want, and because of this, it is almost like a simplified gameplay. I think it creates a more optimal way of playing Resto Druid in Mythic Plus environments, because you don't have to apply HOTS all of the time, because your Grove Guardians can actually properly heal the party depending on how much damage is coming out. Outside of that, Resto Druid or Druid in general can provide decent utility, because if you're the only Druid in the party, you provide arguably one of the best group buffs when it comes to Mythic Plus, and that is Mark of the Wild. In terms of some of the negative things, Interrupt can be awkward to pick up, especially because you might lose some survivability, which is probably going to be a big deal when you're doing the highest keys in the world. But this video is not about the highest keys in the world. This video is about doing those, again, plus 20 keys on PTR server in PUG environment and trying to manage your group and keeping everyone alive. And Resto Druid, honestly, in my eyes, was probably one of the best healers in that. You can have mana issues depending on how you play, but if you really trust your group members, if you really trust your Grove Guardians does not cost a lot of mana to cast, and again, it really depends on how much damage your group is going to take. So without a doubt, if I were to rank Resto Druid right now, it would probably be A or S tier. I think in terms of carrying groups in that 20 mythic range and things like that, in terms of pugs, I think Resto Druid is probably going to be one of the highest, because I genuinely believe it's a little bit easier to play now because of Grove Guardians, and I think your continuous HPS is extremely high, if not the highest out of all the healers, which means that you can just sit back and relax in your HOTS, let your HOTS do the work, let your Grove Guardians do the work, and it's just going to be a HPS beast, and honestly felt really, really easy. In terms of Preservation of Evoker, let's talk about the good and bad things about this healer when it comes to Mythic Plus. And I was actually pleasantly surprised about Preservation of Evoker when it came to Mythic Plus testing, because honestly, I wasn't really excited about the 4-set bonus, and I'm still not very excited about the 4-set bonus because it provides a lot of orange in terms of who gets echoes, but the 2-set bonus, again, a lot of field crafting here, is arguably one of the most impactful 2-set bonuses that I've seen from healers, because it's just so good in terms of, again, 2-set bonus, it's going to cast Living Flames on, depending on which empowered ability you use. So if you use Fire Breath, it's going to cast Living Flames on enemies. If you use something like Spirit Bloom, it's going to cast Living Flame on allies. But because you're casting that Living Flames, it's going to proc so much Essence Burst that you won't even know what to do with this. Honestly, it felt really impactful, maybe more impactful in raids than it did in Mythic Plus in terms of the gameplay changes, and I was able to achieve good numbers in terms of HPS and DPS, because guess what? It's one of the tier sets that actually provides DPS value, because you can use Fire Breath, and that Fire Breath is going to cast Living Flames. There is some negatives in terms of Preservation of Evoker, because they nerfed Resonating Sphere for Temporal Anomaly. That is a talent that allows you to apply echoes or baby echoes to your targets or get hit by Temporal Anomaly. Now, there is less echoes coming out of your Temporal Anomaly if you're using Resonating Sphere, which means maybe you won't be using the exact same talent setup. I think that's more true for raids than Mythic Plus. And I was really upset about this. I was like, how am I going to get echoes in terms of the party, in terms of trying to get my grace period, in terms of trying to blanket people with... Again, I was kind of upset about it in terms of the echo generation, but all of my fears were kind of alleviated, because Blizzard's, or at least in my eyes, Blizzard's intention is to lower the need for Temporal Anomaly, because it's going to provide less echoes. Even if you pick Resonating Sphere, you might be picking some other talents. But let's say it provides less echoes, but you're generating so many more essence bursts that you can manually apply echoes to people that are missing them, because again, you're going to get so many essence bursts, and because of this, you also probably will have a lot less mana issues, because you get so many essence bursts and you're able to use them into Disintegrate. With, again, with Energy Loop, you're getting mana back. So there's a lot of emphasis on 2-set bonus. It is absolutely insane in terms of what it provides. The 4-set bonus by itself, I feel, is extremely lackluster when you compare it to something like a 2-set bonus. So with Preservation of Evoker, I was able to get decent numbers and things like that, but there are a couple of downsides that can be pretty big. Range. You have range limitations on most of your healing abilities, which can be extremely daunting if you have a heavy range composition. Now, I do think that at the highest keys in the world, I think there's going to be a lot more emphasis on melee, because guess what? Rogues are getting reworked, and if any class is getting reworked, they're probably going to be OP. So if there's going to be much more melee emphasis, Preservation of Evoker is going to climb, but I'm not willing to make that prediction yet. So I still think if you do play with a lot of range compositions, it can be awkward in terms of trying to heal everyone, in terms of trying to get everyone Dream Breath. I think your DPS rotation is very simplistic, which can be a good or a bad thing. In my opinion, it's a pretty good thing because you can provide a decent amount of damage with a relatively simple button rotation, which when compared to something like Resto Druid, who has an insane button rotation if you want to min-max your DPS, pick your poison in terms of which you prefer. I talked about the 2-set bonus and things like that. While I did say it's really powerful in terms of what it provides, there is a lot of overhealing that you can get with the 2-set bonus, because if you're casting Spirit Bloom has been buffed by a significant amount, and you can actually bring up the party from the brink of death to full, depending on how many people need healing or how much HP they're missing. But Spirit Bloom basically slaps. It does a lot of healing, but once you use a Spirit Bloom, you bring someone to near full HP or close to full HP, your Living Flames are going to be cast on those allies, and those Living Flames most likely are going to go into overhealing. Based on my dungeon and looking at details, Living Flame accounted for a huge amount of overhealing. Maybe it's going to be different if you're doing dungeons that require consistent healing or really high healing in terms of high tyrannicals, or maybe bursting keys and things like that, but generally speaking, the 2-set bonus can fall into overhealing a lot. I think in my initial ranking for Preservation of Evoker, I'm probably going to be placing them somewhere in B tier right now. B or A tier, honestly, it really depends. Again, this is not a meta ranking, because if Augmentation of Evoker is going to be something that is absolutely mandatory, like it is in Season 2, which is kind of looking like that so far, if it's going to be mandatory, Preservation of Evoker's utility, or again, duplicate utility, is going to be viewed as a negative thing, and Evoker is going to fall. The same can be said for a lot of other classes, but the thing is, Augmentation of Evoker is absolutely mandatory in Season 2. A lot of other classes might not be viewed as absolutely mandatory, but again, this is not a meta prediction. Again, the 2-set bonus is really powerful. The 4-set bonus does not feel all that good. You have range limitations. There is good and bad things about this class. I think it falls into this decent category right now, and I think if you're someone who really likes Preservation of Evoker, I think you'll be surprised by the power of the 2-set bonus and how it changes everything, especially when it comes to raiding environment, because I tested out Preservation of Evoker in raid, and it actually felt like almost like a new healer in terms of how you approach healing. Guys, let me know how I feel about the talents that I might have missed out in terms of testing, because I think there might be a couple of new builds emerging, especially in that temporal anomaly space. Now let's go to Holy Paladin. Holy Paladin is going to be one of those healers that honestly I'm expecting a lot more changes, but let's go talk about the good and bad things that I had or experienced during my testing. So first of all, in terms of the tier set, I thought the 2-set was actually a very decent addition in terms of your Holy Paladin arsenal, because it provided a decent amount of damage and it provided a decent amount of healing, because you're almost encouraged to override your Glimmer of Lights, because it's going to give you Holy Reverberation, and Holy Reverberation stacks, and you're most likely in Metaplus content already rewriting glimmers when it comes to damaging or healing members based on, again, if you use Daybreak, Rising Sunlight is going to cast multiple Holy Shocks. You're already getting multiple stacks of Holy Reverberation, whether you're going to be using that on ally who needs immediate healing or someone who needs, or in terms of providing DPS. So the 2-set bonus actually fits into this whole Glimmer of Light playstyle and actually felt pretty impactful in terms of healing and DPS, and I think it's a really good addition. Now in terms of 4-set bonus, reducing the cooldown of your Daybreak, I think, again, if you're using Daybreak on cooldown in Mythic Plus, depending whether you're going to be using it for DPS or depending if you're going to be using it for healing in terms of resetting your glimmers, and then, hey, I'm going to use my Rising Sunlight for DPS or healing, I genuinely feel that it requires certain patterns for you to really make it work. I'm not sold on the 4-set bonus, especially in terms of ingenuity. I think it could have been a lot more interesting. I think they're taking the lazy route. So in terms of tuning for Holy Paladin, I'm very scared, especially with Holy Power, in terms of how you're going to be spending your Holy Power. Now, every single healer has received buffs to their single target healing, which means that Holy Paladin no longer has the monopoly on spot healing. In Season 2, Holy Paladin is the spot healing king. No healer is going to get close to the amount of spot healing that you're achieving. In Season 3, in my PTR testing, every other healer has climbed substantially in terms of how much spot healing they can provide. For example, I was running my Resto Shaman and I was able to get 400, 500k healing surges or healing waves, again, depending on mastery, depending on undulation, things like that. But again, I'm just trying to showcase that spot healing for every single other healer has been increased significantly. Now, Holy Paladin did get spot healing increases in terms of Flash Light and Holy Light, but those are not really good buffs in terms of trying to create a more fluid gameplay, because if you're getting buffs to Flashlight and Holy Light, you might have to hardcast a lot more in terms of using those spells, which means it's going to take away from your melee playstyle of instant cast. The fact that Word of Glory hasn't received any buffs whatsoever so far means that how are you going to spend your Holy Power? Holy Power is becoming like almost a non-existent part of your gameplay, or it's close to becoming a non-existent part of your gameplay. There is a general concern in terms of Holy Paladin is getting buffs to, again, hard casting abilities are going to be hard casting a lot more. What is happening to Holy Power in terms of, again, this is the gameplay aspect. I think the gameplay for Holy Paladin is in danger of becoming a lot less fluid and a lot more hard casting, which is not fun for me personally, and therefore it's going to drop ranks. But in terms of numbers, you can still, again, based on my testing, I was still able to do a decent amount of damage and decent amount of HPS. And again, Holy Paladin still has a lot of utility. Battle res, you have immunity, you are still a very, very tanky healer. And even though you are a melee healer, you can step out of that melee range and still provide a decent amount of healing because you're not really punished by not being in melee, unlike something like a Mistweaver Monk, who, if you play fist weaving build and you can't be in melee, you're going to be struggling immensely. Every other healer has climbed immensely in terms of spot healing. Holy Paladin climbed a little bit in terms of getting the wrong buffs. So this is why I think Holy Paladin is going to dip a little bit in terms of, again, a lot of people are probably going to say, finally, Holy Paladin is not going to have monopoly on single target healing instead of in terms of spot healing. And I think that's a good thing, but I also think Holy Paladin needs some substantial gameplay changes to make it feel more fun. And because of this, I'm going to be placing Holy Paladin in needs more changes section, because I genuinely believe Holy Paladin is going to receive, whether it's going to be this week or next week or a week after that, I think there is going to be buffs to something like Word of Glory, because I don't think Blizzard wants Holy Power spells or spenders to feel relatively weak in terms of, it's almost like not part of your class. If you're receiving buffs like that, I think Holy Paladin could really jump to much higher ranking. But right now, it definitely needs more changes. I would probably place it somewhere in like C tier or maybe like B tier right now in terms of how it feels to play, in terms of the numbers you're receiving. Again, I don't really like where the gameplay is going in terms of hardcasting, but I have to acknowledge the fact that you're still providing good damage and you're still providing good healing and you still have good utility. Your spot healing might not have increased as much as other healer spot healing because, again, you used to have monopoly on spot healing and over every other healer has been buffed in that term. So Holy Paladin is falling because every other healer is getting better. That's the kind of consensus right now, and it needs some changes to make gameplay feel a bit better. So because of this, I'm going to be placing it in needs more changes, because I fully expect there's going to be significant changes happening this week or next week in terms of making Holy Power a lot more impactful. And now let's go to Holy Priest. Honestly, I had a decent amount of fun with Holy Priest because I think a lot of people tend to bring down Holy Priest when it comes to the highest keys in the world and things like that. There's a large drop off in season 2 and things like that. But if you're looking to do that plus 20 key or weekly key or something along those lines, I actually think Holy Priest is one of the big contenders in terms of providing you with everything that you need. I do think that Priest utility is getting nerfed. Again, it's not that I think. Priest utility is getting nerfed in season 3 in terms of 10.2, in terms of Master Spell having a 2-minute cooldown, Power Infusion getting reduced in terms of effectiveness and things like that, Mind Suit. And again, you're still going to need Priest utility in all these keys because, again, Master Spell, even though it's 2-minute cooldown, it can still be better than nothing. And I do think that Holy Priest falls into that classic healer category. You see someone take damage, you heal them up. Let's go and talk about positives and negatives based on my testing. And again, I talked about this. Holy Priest is a classic type of healer, very reactive. You see someone take damage, you're going to heal them. And honestly, that's going to appeal a lot for new healers because, again, it doesn't require a lot of anticipation because you see someone take damage, you have a lot of arsenal, or you do have a toolkit in terms of single target and AoE healing, specifically your Holy Word spells. And there is a lot of emphasis on your Holy Word spells. I was running Miracle Worker in terms of getting multiple charge of Serenity and Sanctify because guess what? Your tier set is all about using something like Serenity and Sanctify. This is going to apply Renew on targets, and Renew has a chance of basically banking up or allowing you to bank up some of these Holy World spells. And that is a pretty significant change because there is a couple of downsides to it. First of all, I don't like RNG, and that's a big downside because you don't know when you're going to be getting those, again, those additional charges in terms of using Serenity and Sanctify. But there were multiple times when I was doing, again, a trash back pull, and I had multiple charges or 2 charges of my Miracle Worker through something like Holy Word Serenity. I have multiple Serenities, and then I had multiple Serenities from my tier set, which meant that I could use Serenity, back to back type of deal and provide an insane amount of single target healing. Or I could do something with Sanctify in terms of providing additional AoE healing depending on the situation. And that kind of felt strong because if you have a lot of these, or if you have some of these charges banked up from your 4-set bonus, you feel a lot safer in terms of providing AoE healing or single target healing. But generally speaking, I'm not a huge fan of any tier set that is random, especially that is going to provide you with something as powerful as Holy Word spell or charges in terms of using your, again, strong single target heals or strong AoE heals, because there's multiple times where I would approach a trash pack and then I would have multiple charges to the foresight, and then another trash pack I will have none. And that felt, again, it didn't feel all that great. Again, I need to look at the best way to proc it, but I'm just not a fan of anything that requires RNG. But you have to keep in mind, Serenity has been buffed a lot in terms of single target potential, and it's going to save people's lives. Someone has 10% HP, you can almost bring them to the full hit. Again, depends on who you're healing in terms of tank or a DPS player, but Serenity feels like a strong single target. Again, it's an instant single target heal, and you can have multiple charges because of Miracle Worker and because of the tier set. And that can give you a lot of confidence when trying to deal with that spot healing. So in terms of ranking, I would actually probably put Holy Priest somewhere like in a B tier, somewhere close to the Preservation Evoker. I think Preservation Evoker felt a little bit better in terms, again, if you're familiar with Preservation Evoker, you probably can have a really good time, but at the same time, Preservation Evoker has range limitations, so if you have multiple range, it can feel really bad. Holy Priest is definitely easier to play in terms of point and click. You see someone taking damage, you heal them. You also can have multiple charges of your Holy Word spells on top of the foresight bonus as well, so you can really feel confident going into certain trash packs, because again, you can have a lot of spot healing stored up or a lot of AoE healing stored up. I do think Holy Priest utility is getting a little bit weaker in the next patch and things like that, but if you're looking for a healer to get those weekly keys done, in my first impressions in 10.2, I honestly had a good time with Holy Priest. I do think the tier set could be improved immensely in terms of enjoyability, because again, not a fan of oranges or RNG. And now let's go to the next seal, and that's going to be Mistweaver Monk. I'm going to be placing, again, before we're going to do a ranking, let's talk about the positives and negatives that happened to Mistweaver Monk based on my testing on PTR. And oh boy, Mistweaver Monk received some good changes, especially when it comes to Mythic Plus content, because most of the buffs would actually impact you more in Mythic Plus. Or for example, a lot of the nerfs that happened to Mistweaver Monk would probably do with that Clouded Focus Yulon build that would impact you more in raid, because you don't really run that in Mythic Plus. In Mythic Plus, you most likely, or at least I'm hoping, you're still going to be running that Fistweaving build with Feline Stomp, and honestly, that build felt really nice because, again, so many nice buffs to Mistweaver Monk when it comes to Mythic Plus. In terms of the tier set, again, the 2-set bonus was nerfed almost immediately in terms of lowering the uptime of Chi Harmony, and I think there is a lot of kind of ifs about the tier set bonus right now, especially in terms of the 4-set bonus, in terms of which or what type of healing is being stored up, because overall, in terms of the overall healing that the 4-set bonus provides, it's not that great. And I genuinely believe there's many aspects of, again, Mistweaver Monk's healing that does not get stored in the 4-set bonus, which I'm hoping it's going to be fixed, and I think that's going to increase the viability of Mistweaver Monk a lot more. But again, I could almost say something similar to 2-set bonus as well. Is it going to affect every single aspect of your healing in terms of 50% extra? And that is something that requires additional testing and requires additional... I'm just assuming that's going to be fixed. But regardless of that, I still had really good fun with my Mistweaver Monk running that Fistweaving build. I was running that, again, Waker's mana for Mistweaver Monk feels absolutely immensely fun, because you can just press Feline Stomp and Spinning Kraken King, and you're going to be dealing so much damage and so much healing at the same time, and it just felt really easy to play in terms of, again, it just feels right at home. Waker's Manor is Mistweaver's home. It brings me back the memories of Way of the Crane and things like that. So I had a lot of fun. Your spot healing felt a bit better because your Vivify was buffed and things like that. You also have to consider that it's probably going to be a lot more melee emphasis when it comes to that Mythic Plus meta. Again, I don't want to talk about the meta in terms of healers and things like that, but I can almost guarantee you there's probably going to be, again, melee are probably going to rise. There's a melee legendary, rogues are getting reworked, so Mystic Touch in terms of providing additional physical damage from monks is probably going to be considered as a bigger utility, but that, let's leave that until closer to the patch release. In terms of mana, you can definitely feel your mana going down a lot more in terms of Mythic Plus, because guess what, you don't have your Rashox, you don't have your 2-set bonus, you don't have Spirit of the Crane. That means you're going to be spending a lot more time, in my opinion, you're going to be spending a lot more time drinking Mana Tea. I technically did not have mana issues when doing these dungeons as Mistweaver Monk, but I spend a lot more of my time drinking. Again, drinking that Mana Tea, because Mana Tea has been reworked in patch 10.17. I think that's what Blizzard intended for Mistweaver Monks to do, in terms of you're going to be spending more time drinking. You just need to know when to drink or not drink during moments when everyone needs healing. That's something I think that what Blizzard intended when they first redesigned Mana Tea. Again, we talked about the tier set. I actually think the 4 set and the 2 set might have some bugs right now, and I think those bugs, when they're fixed, are going to make the tier set a lot more impactful. In terms of being a melee healer and Mistweaver, I said this multiple times, if you cannot be in melee when you're running that Mistweaving build, you're going to be severely punished. Much more than a Holy Paladin. Holy Paladin is melee, but if it can't be in melee, it's not really that big of a deal. If you're a Mistweaver, if you're a Mistweaver, you can't be in melee, you're going to go or revert back to that. Again, Soothing Mist, Enveloping Mist, Vivify spam, your mana is going to go or dip a lot faster, and you're just going to feel like you're in a panic mode. And that is a big disadvantage to this healer, because I genuinely believe to make this healer perfect, in my opinion, increase the range of your melee abilities by a little bit, fix the tier set bonus a little bit, and I think Mistweaver is going to be in a very solid position when it comes to 10.2. Oh, and I did forget about the utility. If Mistweaver could receive a battle res or a bloodlust, that could be also really good. In terms of ranking Mistweaver Monk, I had a really fun time in terms of running my Mistweaving build. Again, I genuinely would only play Mistweaver Monk when it comes to melee playstyle, because I genuinely believe, why play Mistweaver Monk if you're not going to play it melee? There's only a couple of healers that enjoy that melee playstyle in terms of Mistweaver Monk, in terms of Holy Paladin, and maybe 2.5 in terms of Resto Druid. You can play that in feral form and things like that, depending if that's going to be the best way to go. But I had a lot of fun with Mistweaver Monk. I think they do need to look at the tier set in terms of fixing bugs and issues, in terms of what is contributed to the healing and things like that. I'm hoping that's going to be fixed and it's going to feel a lot more powerful. I would hope, again, I said this multiple times, increase the range of Mistweaver when you're running that, again, Mistweaving build. That would make or improve the quality of life for monks by a significant amount. I don't think anyone is going to disagree with that. I'm going to place Mistweaver Monk in A tier. I don't think it's quite S tier, because I had easier time with my Resto Druid keeping everyone alive, because honestly, Resto Druid HPS just felt so strong, or continuous HPS felt so strong. Mistweaver Monk can still suffer from not being in melee. Mistweaver still does not have bloodlust or battle res and things like that. There's still a little bit of lack of utility, or like high-end utility. Don't get me wrong, Mistweaver's utility, or the baseline utility, in terms of AoE stuns, in terms of Ring of Peace, in terms of Mystic Touch, it's there. In terms of big ticket items of utility, in terms of bloodlust and battle res, in terms of some of the priest utility, they don't have that. So again, couple of things, and Mistweaver Monk would actually be S tier. I'm holding my breath. I have a lot of hoping for this, but right now A tier based on my test. And now let's go and have a look at Restoration Shaman, and this is going to split a lot of people's opinions, because there's going to be multiple changes to gameplay, and a lot of people are going to enjoy this, or a lot of people are going to hate this. And honestly, let's go and have a look at some of the positives and negatives. So first of all, there is going to be mana issues because of the nerfs to Resurgence. There has been a lot of buffs to a lot of your spot healing capabilities, in terms of Healing Surge, in terms of Riptide, in terms of Healing Wave, and this means that things like Chain Heal has taken a step back. And based on my Metaplus testing, I was running that, again, Riptide build, that Primal Tide, Core, Ancestral Awakening, Primordial Wave build, where I would actually save a lot of mana, because I would not be casting Chain Heal, because again, 2-set bonus, it does not interact with Chain Heal in a meaningful way, because only the initial target of Chain Heal gets the proc from Tidal Reservoir. Now, the 2-set bonus is actually not that impactful, and I wasn't really a huge fan of it in terms of the amount of healing that it provided. I actually think it could be improved a lot more. The 4-set bonus is probably going to be something that is going to be a lot more impactful in raid situations, because you're going to be able to spread Riptides on a lot more targets. In Mythic Plus, there's 5 targets. You have a target or a limit cap, and I genuinely believe that the tier set bonus is probably more aimed for Resto Shamans in raid rather than Mythic Plus, but again, it requires more testing. I was actually really pleasantly surprised about the power of your kind of spot healing capabilities, because I was able to get 400-500k healing from single healing surges or healing waves, and that is, again, that does take into impact things like mastery, so it depends how low the person was. Again, undulation procs and things like that. There's multiple changes to your build, but the basic thing that you need to realize is that Chain Heal build, again, if you're trying to push really high keys where mana is going to be an issue and things like that, Chain Heal build is kind of going away. There's a lot more emphasis on your spot healing capabilities. You're kind of going back a little bit to that Shadowlands Primordial Wave type of build. Remember Necrolords? That used to be a thing where you would, again, Riptide would be a big portion of your healing. You're going to be providing a lot of healing from your Primordial Wave, Healing Wave copies, and that will go into your Cloudburst. Unfortunately, Cloudburst has been nerfed significantly, so it doesn't have the same impact anymore, but your Riptides have been buffed also, which means, again, at the end of my dungeons, Riptide was by far the top heal. Your Riptide heals for a lot, your single target heal for a lot, and now your playstyle feels a lot more about like Riptide single target heal, Riptide single target heal, Riptide, like something along those lines. And it can feel a little bit boring, but if you're a die-hard chain heal fan, you're going to probably not like where Resto Shaman is heading. If you're someone who enjoys all type of Resto Shaman gameplay, whether it's going to be chain heal, whether it's going to be Riptide, Primordial Wave, or things like that, you're probably going to have a decent time with Resto Shaman right now. One of the downsides is that if there is a lot of healing needed, you can almost feel like, how do I deal with this AoE healing right now? If you have Ascendance, you can use Ascendance. It has been nerfed. If you have Spirit Link, you can use Spirit Link, but you need to back up your Spirit Link totem with AoE healing or healing in general, because otherwise it's just not going to do a lot. So people are probably going to be somewhat confused about this playstyle, especially if they don't micromanage or can use their something like Primordial Waves properly, or if they don't use something like Cloudburst Totem properly. But I generally enjoy this playstyle, so I had a decent time. So in terms of ranking Resto Shaman, honestly, it's going to depend on who you ask. I think that if you're not doing the highest keys in the world, you can just play whatever build you want, and you can use Chain Heal if you want. Again, you don't have to min-max your playstyle. You might be running keys where you don't have mana issues because just stuff dies really easily because it's not a high key. You can run whichever build you want, but if you want to min-max right now, if you want to min-max Resto Shaman in the highest keys or higher keys, and especially if you have mana as an issue, you probably will be looking to drop Chain Heal, which is going to split opinions. If you hate, if you're a big enjoyer of Chain Heal, you probably would place Resto Shaman in C tier or something like needs more changes. You probably are not going to be happy where Resto Shaman is heading. If you're someone like me who enjoys multiple different gameplays the Resto Shaman can provide and has played that Shadowlands, Primordial Wave type of gameplay before, you're probably going to be placing Resto Shaman somewhere in the B tier, along the lines of other healers. I'm not a big enjoyer of this playstyle in Raid. I actually enjoy Chain Heal in Raid a lot more. In Mythic Plus, I don't mind this Riptide playstyle. I really don't. I do think it can feel sometimes a little bit slow, but there are talents to make that. We'll have to see if the talent build is going to change, but there might be some talents that are going to improve. Again, haste is probably going to be a lot better in terms of stats for Resto Shaman, but I'm a big enjoyer of Chain Heal in something like Raid environments, but I don't mind this playstyle in Mythic Plus. So this is why I'm very, very kind of undecided in terms of whether I should play Resto Shaman in the future and things like that, because I'm kind of split. In Mythic Plus, I enjoy this playstyle. I'm going to be placing this in B tier. If you don't enjoy this playstyle, you're probably going to be placing it in C tier, but I do. I enjoy it. Let's go B for the time being, but I think there could be more changes to make Shaman more fun. And lastly, let's go to Discipline Priest. Discipline Priest is one of the healers that received the most changes in 10.2, and honestly, again, I think it's going to split opinions. I think overall the changes that happened to Discipline Priest are more positive than negative, but I do have to say that Discipline Priest is not a complete healer right now, and you'll see what I mean. Again, out of all the healers that received most changes, Discipline Priest is there. Resto Druid received some significant changes, things like that. But let's go and talk about some positives and negatives when it comes to Discipline Priest in terms of Mythic Plus testing on PTR. In terms of simplification of Discipline Priest, there's a lot of buttons that disappeared. For example, you have passive abilities now in terms of Mind Blast proccing Schism. You have things like Shadow Covenant, which is going to be procced by a Shadow Fiend or your Mindbender. And because of this, I was running a Squid build where my uptime of Mindbender was actually really, really significant because of your 4-set bonus where you're going to be casting smites and going to be casting, again, basically double smites. And during Shadow Covenant, if you're casting or prioritizing smites to some extent, you can pretty much have an extremely or almost permanent Shadow Covenant. Again, there is going to be a lot of debate about what is going to be the main way to, or how to use your Shadow Covenant windows in terms of optimizing it. But smite usage is going to be, or is looking to be, much more important right now. Smite is becoming really, really important, especially during your Shadow Covenant windows if you want to bring down the cooldown of your Mindbender. And if you bring down the cooldown of your Mindbender, you will bring down or having more use of Shadow Covenant. And Shadow Covenant felt strong. There were moments when I mess up and I don't have Shadow Covenant, things like that, and honestly I could feel a lot weaker without Shadow Covenant, but just don't mess up, play better. So overall, you can have a lot higher uptime in terms of Shadow Covenant because of your 4-set bonus in terms of smite. Again, depending whether that's going to be the way to play, I was just messing around with multiple different builds. Your atonements actually move bars. In the similar way that your Resto Druid HOTS, you can actually see bars moving up because the healing has been increased. The same way that your atonements actually move HP bars and it actually feels a lot more impactful, which is honestly a welcome change that every Discipline Priest has been asking for years and years when it comes to that 5-man content. On top of that, Discipline Priest damage felt really strong. It's probably to do with the fact, again, your Holy Nova is impactful with Rhapsody and things like that. Your Mindbender uptime is a lot higher, so your Mindbender is going to be dealing a decent amount of damage depending on which talents you're playing. Again, I was playing that squiddy build with a lot of emphasis on Mindbender, so my damage was looking really decent, arguably one of the highest right now. Again, you still have PI and things like that that are not included in damage meters, so if that is included in damage meters, Discipline Priest is looking in a really good position when it comes to providing DPS. Now in terms of some of the negatives, and these are some of the big ones, in terms of I miss instant cast radiances. I don't care what people are gonna tell me. I know there is a lot less setup right now because you don't have to press Schism, you don't have to press Shadow Covenant. They're not abilities anymore. They're baked into passive talents, or they're baked into other talents passively, which means your setup time's a lot less, or it requires a lot less time, which is great. But I still miss instant cast radiances because it just saved my ass so many times when unexpected damage happens and I need to provide people with healing and I need to apply atonements. Instant cast radiances in season 2 because of your tier set felt really fun. Now you have to cast this, and again, I still think it's less fun. In the exact same way the Preservation Evoker season 1 tier set allows you to have instant cast Living Flames, I miss instant cast Living Flames as Preservation Evoker. And I'm going to miss instant cast Radiances as Discipline Priest when it comes to season 3 because that's going away. In terms of other things, again, depending which build is going to be the way to go, if you're running that Shadow Covenant build, if you're running the Mindbender build, if you mess up and don't have Shadow Covenant, it can feel somewhat weak. If someone needs single target healing, you have multiple ways of dealing with that that might be different than other healers. You might not just go straight into flash heal because you might not have enough time. You might use your pain suppression, you might shield them first. So it can take a little time to get used to in terms of how to manage or deal with single target or spot healing, but Discipline Priest is not a complete class right now because honestly there's so many talents that are just not good anymore. Things like, again, Expiation is a perfect example of this. This was a decent talent before because Mind Blast had a much lower cooldown. Now Mind Blast has a much longer cooldown and this talent feels a lot weaker. The same can be said for multiple other talents that would rely on other abilities that are now deleted. So Discipline Priest, in my opinion, it's an excellent first iteration of the class, but it needs a lot of changes and tuning when it comes to talents. For example, Ultimate Penitence, the new spell that came about, I think that needs a lot of tuning in terms of Mythic Plus. I don't think it... Again, I wasn't able to test a lot of this talent, but from what I've heard, a lot of people are relatively unhappy about this when it comes to Mythic Plus content because the cooldown is still relatively long and doesn't feel impactful for the cooldown that it has. Again, you can lower the cooldown and things like that. And in terms of ranking Discipline Priest, honestly, I think you can have a really hard time. I would actually place this. It needs more changes because I genuinely believe in the next week or maybe this week, maybe a week after, they're definitely going to be looking at the talents. They're going to be looking at talents, they're going to be looking at Ultimate Penitence, they're going to be looking at balancing those talents in a way that you can actually use them and get more use out of it. And I think Discipline Priest is going to feel a lot more impactful. In terms of the gameplay, in terms of how I felt about Discipline Priest, I probably would place it somewhere in A tier. I thought the gameplay was really fun, but I could also fall into that new class syndrome because it basically is like a new class, and anything that's shiny and bright, I gravitate towards it, and sometimes I can have tunnel vision. Like, a lot of people might be saying, hey, there's so much emphasis on smite and you're just basically spamming smite in a lot of situations, it doesn't feel that impactful. I still had a good time. I still had a good time with a simplified gameplay. I still felt that atonements actually healed people. I had a really big uptime on Shadow Covenant, and I thought Discipline Priest, I gravitate towards that healing through damage playstyle, and I had really a lot of fun. I'm not placing Discipline Priest in S tier right now because it is not a complete class. It's missing a bunch of talent improvements. Again, in next week or based on maybe in a couple of weeks, maybe on a couple of more iterations, Discipline Priest is going to be S tier. Right now, I would not place it S tier. Right now, I would actually place it in needs more changes because it's one of those healers that needs some significant improvements in terms of talents. And that concludes my tier list. Let's go and have a look at the summary. And this is going to be my initial first impression tier list based on all the healers. Again, I got to test every single healer in Mythic Plus, and I chose to test it on Warcraft Mana in terms of high HPS dungeons. And this is a tier list based on my success rate, based on healers that felt they could carry the group, based on healers that could provide a lot of HPS, and based on healers that I enjoyed myself personally. So it's healer enjoyment, how fun the healers were, and the success rate in terms of carrying a group. I wasn't looking at the utility they were providing. I wasn't looking at the meta in terms of how each healer is going to fill in or fit into that Mythiclus meta, because that's going to come down in a month or a month and a half when we were close to that patch release. In terms of for the people who want me to rank Holy Paladin Discipline Priest, because I do think Holy Paladin Discipline Priest needs significant changes in terms of making it more fun. In terms of Holy Paladin, Holy Power needs to be more impactful. Again, your spot healing could be more impactful in terms of Horde of Glory. I actually anticipate those changes happening very, very soon. I think Blizzard is going to cave in and is going to buff them. So right now, without those changes, I probably would place it somewhere in like C tier or B tier, so something like low tier B. In terms of, I still think the numbers wise, you're providing good damage and healing, and you have a lot of utility as Holy Paladin. Gameplay wise, you're in a dangerous position where your Holy Power doesn't feel that impactful. And the Holy Paladin has fallen significantly, in my opinion, not because Holy Paladin got nerfed, it's because every other healer has been buffed in spot heal. That's basically why Holy Paladin is falling. So I would probably place it here if I really had to. If Holy Paladin is going to get buffs to Horde of Glory and things like that, I actually think Holy Paladin will probably climb somewhere closer to A tier. And this, guys, let me know if you want me to do this weekly tier list every week where I re-rank every healer based on the changes during that week. Because you have to remember, I can only test healers during Thursday, Friday, or mainly the weekend, because that's when Mythiclus testing is available. So I could place Holy Paladin somewhere in like low B tier if I really had to. I could place Discipline Priest somewhere in like A tier, because again, it's not a complete healer right now. So many talents need to be reworked, and again, they're going to feel better once the talents have been reworked. But I had a lot of fun. I think the simplified version of Discipline Priest is going to be appealing for a lot more people out there, because I think this class was gate kept by the complexity. And I think actually, if you take a step back and look at all the healers, there's been a lot of simplification in terms of how you play healers. Resto Druid has been simplified because Flourish is no longer as impactful as it was before, especially in raid situations. Your Grove Guardians or pets, again, they're not really pets, but you do a lot more passive healing through your Grove Guardians. It's simplified. Discipline Priest, a lot of buttons have been passively added to other abilities. A lot of buttons have been deleted. A lot of simplified gameplay. There has been a lot. Blizzard is trying to make healing easier, and on top of that, your spot healing for every single class is a lot better. So I genuinely believe healing in the next patch is most likely going to be a lot more approachable. Blizzard is trying to make healing approachable to a lot of other healers because they're simplifying classes and they're giving you spot healing capabilities. In terms of like, again, I want Discipline Priest to receive more changes, and I want Holy Paladins to receive more changes. Other healers, again, Resto Shaman, or sorry, Resto Druid received some significant changes as well. In terms of healers that received the most changes, Discipline Priest is getting reworked. Resto Druid is almost getting reworked because there's a lot more emphasis on Grove Guardians, which have been introduced in patch 10.17. I think that is going to be a little bit more impactful when it comes to mythic raiding, because in raiding you can run that Tree of Life, you can run that Reforestation build. We'll have to see if there's going to be new talent changes that are going to come into Mythiclus, but I kind of ran the same talent build for Resto Druid, and I had really a lot of fun. At the end of the day, in Mythiclus and in raids, based on my testing, based on the talents that I ran, Nourish, which is cast by your Grove Guardians, was one of the top, if not the best heals. That's just to showcase you how strong Grove Guardians are right now, depending on which build you're running. Mistweaver, fix the tier set, make it a lot more interactive in terms of what is stored and things like that. Increase the range of Mistweaver Monk in terms of melee if you're playing Fist Weaving, and you're probably good to go. Add Bloodlust or Balres, and you're probably going to have Mistweaver climbing around A or S tier even. Those three changes would honestly make Mistweaver Monk almost a perfect healer when it comes to providing melee playstyle in that Mythiclus content. Preservation of Evoker, I still think there's range limitations to it. 2-set bonus is absolutely insane and changes your gameplay in a very meaningful way, especially when it comes to raiding environment. You're going to have so many essence bursts, and you're going to use those essence bursts to probably manually apply echoes to people because your echo generation is lower, or at least you're not providing as many echoes from Temporal Anomaly. So I can see what Blizzard is doing. They're removing the power of Temporal Anomaly or Resonating Sphere, and they're trying to give you the power to yourself. Borrowed power through 2-set bonus. Again, what's going to happen in Season 4, if there is a Season 4, when your 2-set bonus is gone and your echo generation or essence burst is going to be limited? There needs to be something done about preservation of Evoker in terms of Temporal Anomaly and what Blizzard wants to do, because I'm not sure if Blizzard knows what they want to do. Again, borrowed power is not a great thing sometimes, because you can look at Discipline Priest 2-set bonus or a Discipline Priest tier set bonus in Season 2 in terms of instant cast powered radiances. I kind of want that back as a talent. Holy Priest, I think, is still a solid healer. I think you can still have a really good time, especially because it's a classic type of healer. I do not like the tier set bonus in terms of being very random. I don't like anything being random, but the fact that you can bank up, again, with Miracle Worker, you can bank up multiple charges of Serenity Sanctify, you can have multiple charges of Serenity Sanctify from a tier set bonus and things like that. You can feel a lot more confident going into a trash bag pull or a raid boss or a normal boss in Mythic Plus when you have those charges, because you can use them for single target or healer. And oh boy, Serenity single target, it is really, really buffed and feels really impactful. And Resto Shaman, you're either going to hate or love the playstyle. Chain Heal playstyle is definitely going away in those hierarchies. If you're not doing the highest keys in the world, play whatever you want. If you enjoy Chain Heal build, and if you're doing, again, if you're not doing the highest keys in the world, play whatever you want. At the end of the day, it really doesn't matter. But if you want to min-max, Chain Heal is probably taking a step back, which is going to split the community. If you're a Riptide enjoyer, I would place it in the B tier. If you're not a Riptide enjoyer, if you only played Resto Shaman for the sole purpose of spamming Chain Heal, you're probably going to be placing Resto Shaman in C tier. I like the Primordial Wave build. I'm going to be placing in B tier. Guys, let me know how you feel about this video. I'm really sorry for the length of this. Let me know if you want that new kind of series emerging every week, a new tier list based on the changes that happened during that week. Let me know if you like to see something like that. And if you like the videos, if you like the content, like and subscribe, and I'll see you in my next video.